Brothers and sisters, 25,000 youth soldiers. Say it slowly. 25,000. Do you feel the weight of that number? Do you hear the echo it sends across the dusty plains of the Sahel, through the villages of Burkina Faso, and into the chambers of power in Washington, Paris, and beyond? This is not just an announcement. This is not just policy. This is prophecy taking flesh. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood before his people and declared, "We will train 25,000 youth soldiers," he was not simply speaking of rifles and uniforms. He was calling forth a generation. He was planting the seeds of a force that will defend, rebuild, and redefine the future of a continent that for too long has been told it cannot stand on its own feet. Think about it. For decades, Africa's security has been outsourced. Armies trained abroad, missions commanded from outside, decisions signed in foreign capitals. But now a new voice rises. We will train our own. We will trust our youth. We will shape our destiny. Friends, tonight we enter that story. We will walk through the fire of fear, the storm of criticism, and the dawn of a new hope. For the number 25,000 is not only about soldiers, it is about symbols, it is about sovereignty, it is about survival. Stay with us. What you are about to hear will shake the way you see Africa, and perhaps the way you see the world itself. Brothers and sisters, picture the scene. The sun was high over Ouagadougou, pouring its fierce light on a nation that has lived too long in the shadows of insecurity. The flags of Burkina Faso fluttered in the hot wind, red, green, and gold blazing against the blue sky. In the crowd, young men and women pressed forward, eyes wide with anticipation. Farmers, students, mothers carrying children on their backs, all had come to witness a moment they sensed would mark history. And then he walked in. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, dressed not in the glittering robes of power, but in the simple uniform of a soldier. His steps were firm, his gaze steady. The crowd fell silent, as if even the earth itself was waiting for his words. He raised his hand, and in that stillness, he spoke. We will train 25,000 youth soldiers. The words dropped like thunder. 25,000. Not 2,000. Not 5,000. But 25,000. The number rolled across the gathering like a wave, washing over the elders who remembered Sankara, electrifying the youth who dreamed of dignity, and startling even those who had come only out of curiosity. Why 25,000? Because this is not a token gesture. This is not a half measure. This is a declaration that Burkina Faso will no longer outsource its survival. It will no longer beg others to send troops when its villages are burning, when its children are kidnapped, when its mothers cry out for protection. No, this time the sons and daughters of the land will rise to defend it. Brothers and sisters, imagine what that means. In a country of 20 million, 25,000 trained youth soldiers is not just a statistic. It is a movement. It is the statement that every village, every province, every corner of the nation will be represented in this army of the young. From the dusty fields of Kaya to the bustling streets of Bobo Dioulasso, a new generation is being summoned. The announcement carried layers of meaning. On the surface, it is about defense, a response to terrorism, to armed groups that have spilled blood and terrorized civilians. But beneath the surface, it is about something deeper. It is about reclaiming ownership of destiny. For too long, African nations have been told, you cannot defend yourselves. You cannot manage your own security. You must rely on foreign missions, on imported expertise, on borrowed strength. But when Traoré said 25,000, he was tearing up that script. Consider this. When he said youth, he was not simply pointing to the strongest muscles or the quickest runners. He was pointing to the very heart of the nation. In Burkina Faso, more than 60% of the population is under the age of 25. These are the ones who have grown up in the shadow of broken promises, the ones who have known poverty and seen their land exploited. And now, they are told, "You are not a burden. You are not a problem to be managed. You are the solution. You are the defenders of our future." Think of the psychology of that moment. For a young man in the village who has known only hardship, this is a call to dignity. For a young woman who has seen her community live in fear, this is a call to courage. For parents, it is both terrifying and inspiring. To see their children asked not just to study or work, but to stand guard over the nation itself. And the symbolism does not stop there. 25,000 is a number too large to be ignored. It is too large for the West to dismiss as a symbolic act. It is too large for the enemies of Burkina Faso to underestimate. It is a number that says, we are serious, we are ready, we are many. Brothers and sisters, think of the logistics. Training 25,000 young people requires not only discipline, but also vision. It means building training camps, developing curriculums, investing in weapons and uniforms, and feeding and housing recruits. It is an undertaking that says we are willing to pay the price. Because sovereignty, true sovereignty, is never free. Traoré knows this. He knows critics will say the country cannot afford it. He knows some will whisper that it is reckless. But he also knows the alternative. To keep waiting, to keep pleading for foreign troops, to keep watching villages burn while promises are made in Paris and Washington. No, better to bear the cost of freedom than the shame of dependence. And so that day, as his words echoed across the nation, something shifted. 25,000 youth soldiers. A number, yes, but more than that, a story. The story of a small, landlocked country daring to say, we will not die quietly, we will not remain the playground of outside powers, we will rise, and our youth will lead the way. This was not just an announcement. It was a line drawn in the sand. It was a trumpet blast calling a generation to stand. It was, brothers and sisters, the opening of a new chapter, not just for Burkina Faso, but for Africa itself. Brothers and sisters, when a leader speaks words that shake the ground, the world does not remain silent. And make no mistake, Traoré's declaration of 25,000 youth soldiers was an earthquake. The tremors rippled first through the streets of Ouagadougou, then across the Sahel, and finally into the headlines of the world. Let us begin at home. In the markets of Ouagadougou, vendors who had been haggling over millet and groundnuts stopped mid-sentence to repeat the number. 25,000. Did you hear? 25,000. In schools, young boys who once dreamed of leaving for Europe now whispered to each other, maybe we will wear the uniform, maybe we will defend our land. Mothers gathered at wells, balancing water jars on their heads, and asked, will my son be called? Will my daughter march? For some, the thought brought pride. For others, it brought fear. But for all, it was impossible to ignore. Students filled the streets with energy. Some shouted with joy. This is our time. Africa belongs to us. Others carried banners reading, we are ready, Captain. Show us the way. The youth saw in Traoré's words an invitation to dignity. A chance to move from unemployment and frustration into purpose and mission. They did not just hear the call to arms, they heard the call to meaning. Yet not everyone was convinced. In quiet cafes, intellectuals debated furiously. Is this wisdom? One asked. Training so many young people in war may militarize our society beyond repair. Another countered, better to be militarized than terrorized, better to be prepared than to be dependent. In that clash of voices, one thing was clear. The country had been shaken awake. The reactions did not stop at Burkina Faso's borders. Across the Sahel, neighbors watched closely. In Mali, Niger, and Guinea, leaders whispered, "If Traoré succeeds, the tide will turn. We too may follow." To them, 25,000 was not a number. It was a signal that the old colonial security order, where France and the West dictated terms, was crumbling. It was a signal that sovereignty might finally be taken, not begged for. But there were also fears. Some governments worried, what if these young soldiers cross borders? What if this sparks a regional fire? In fragile states, the announcement was heard not only as hope, but as a warning. The balance of power in the Sahel was shifting, and no one could pretend otherwise. And then came the international reaction, the roar of the global press. Western headlines screamed, "Burkina Faso to train 25,000 child soldiers." They chose words carefully, painting youth as children, painting defense as militarization. News anchors in Paris and Washington furrowed brows, asking whether Traoré was turning his country into a fortress. Security analysts filled panels with grim faces, warning that instability might spread. But brothers and sisters, while Western lips trembled with criticism, African hearts beat with pride. On social media, hashtags erupted. Sovereignty now, Youth Army, Africa Rising. Diaspora Africans from Paris to New York posted messages. At last, a leader who trusts his people. For every Western article predicting doom, there were African voices proclaiming destiny. Let us pause here. Do you see the contrast? Outsiders look at 25,000 and see danger. Insiders look at 25,000 and see dignity. Outsiders call it militarization. Insiders call it liberation. Outsiders fear chaos. Insiders feel pride. It is the age-old divide. Who controls the story? For centuries, Africa's story has been written by others: colonial governors, foreign correspondents, international NGOs. But this time, with one announcement, Traoré forced the world to reckon with a new narrative. No longer the victim, Burkina Faso was choosing its own path. And this clash of perspectives created the climax. The voices of pride, fear, hope, and criticism collided in the global arena. Western diplomats summoned emergency meetings. Regional leaders whispered in late-night calls. Villagers in the Sahel sang songs of courage. Mothers prayed over their children. The world, for a brief moment, turned its eyes not to Washington or Paris, but to Ouagadougou. Brothers and sisters, remember this: reactions reveal more than actions. The fury of the West revealed its insecurity. The pride of the youth revealed their hunger for meaning. The debates of the intellectuals revealed a nation wrestling with itself. And in that wrestling, destiny was being forged. 25,000 youth soldiers. It was more than a number. It was a mirror reflecting fear in the eyes of some, hope in the hearts of others, and truth in the soul of Africa. Brothers and sisters, when a stone is thrown into a river, it does not sink quietly. It creates ripples, spreading outward until the entire surface is disturbed. Traoré's announcement was such a stone. The ripples are political, social, and economic, and they are already reshaping the waters of Burkina Faso. Political consequences. First, let us speak of politics. For years, the name of Burkina Faso was spoken in the same breath as instability. Coups, corruption, foreign interference. These words weighed like chains. But the moment Traoré declared 25,000 youth soldiers, the chains rattled. Politically, he positioned himself not as a caretaker of foreign interests, but as a commander of national destiny. To the people, he became more than a president. He became a protector. His decision silenced those who doubted his authority. Even critics had to admit, this was not the action of a timid leader. This was bold, risky, defiant. It sent a message to allies and enemies alike. I am not here to manage decline. I am here to lead resurgence. Internationally, the consequences were just as profound. Western powers, who once treated Burkina Faso as a pawn, now saw a player. 25,000 soldiers meant leverage. It meant that Ouagadougou would no longer beg at the doors of Paris or Washington. It could negotiate, resist, and even inspire others. Politically, Traoré was no longer on defense. He was on offense. Social consequences. But politics alone cannot explain the earthquake. The social consequences were equally seismic. For the youth, this was a transformation of identity. In many African nations, young people are told they are the future, but rarely trusted with the present. They face unemployment, exclusion, and humiliation. But now, 25,000 were told, you are the guardians, you are the defenders, you are not the problem, you are the solution. This declaration lit a fire of pride. Young men who once drifted toward crime or migration found purpose. Young women, often sidelined, now saw a chance to stand shoulder to shoulder with their brothers, proving that patriotism knows no gender. The army of youth was not just about guns, it was about dignity. For families, the effect was complex. Parents felt fear. What mother does not tremble when her child is called to war? Yet many also felt honor. In the villages, fathers spoke with pride. My son will wear the uniform. My daughter will protect our soil. Across generations, a bond was forming, a shared belief that the nation could rise again. And beyond pride, there was unity. The training of youth soldiers meant that every province, every ethnic group, every community would contribute. Mosi, Fulani, Gourmandche, all would stand together. In a land often divided by ethnicity, this was no small achievement. 25,000 youth soldiers meant 25,000 bridges across old divides. Economic consequences. Yet, brothers and sisters, let us not romanticize without reality. Economically, the challenge was heavy. Training, feeding, clothing, and arming 25,000 soldiers is no simple task. For a nation where resources are scarce, this was a massive undertaking. Critics warned, the treasury will bleed. The economy will suffer. But Traoré and his supporters argued differently. They said, security is the foundation of prosperity. Without defense, there can be no development. And there was truth in this. Villages plagued by attacks cannot farm in peace. Markets under threat cannot trade freely. Roads patrolled by enemies cannot carry goods. Security is not separate from economics. It is the soil in which growth must be planted. Moreover, the training program itself created jobs. Local suppliers were needed for food, uniforms, and materials. Construction of training camps boosted local economies. Even the weapons industry, often neglected, found reason to grow. Instead of importing everything, Burkina Faso began dreaming of producing some of its own. What began as a military project had the seeds of an industrial awakening. Historical echoes. And in all this, history whispered. The ghost of Thomas Sankara walked beside Traoré's decision. Sankara once spoke of soldiers of the people, men and women who were not merely warriors but builders of schools, planters of trees, healers of the sick. He saw the army not as a tool of oppression, but as a servant of the nation. Traoré's 25,000 youth soldiers echoed that dream. If trained not only in combat, but also in construction, education, and civic duty, they could become more than an army. They could become a force of national renewal. Imagine 25,000 hands planting crops, repairing roads, building homes, while also standing ready to defend the soil. That is not militarization. That is mobilization. The struggle between hope and risk. Still, the consequences are not without danger. Militarizing youth carries risks. A poorly managed program could breed militias, abuses, or instability. A generation trained in war must also be trained in wisdom, or the cure may become the disease. This is the tightrope Traoré walks, to harness the fire of youth without letting it burn uncontrolled. But hope outweighs fear. For the first time in decades, Burkina Faso's people feel that they are not passive victims of outside powers or terrorist groups. They feel ownership of their defense, pride in their youth, and faith in their leader. Brothers and sisters, when 25,000 young people march under one flag, it is more than defense. It is rebirth. It is the planting of a seed whose fruit may nourish not only Burkina Faso, but all of Africa. Brothers and sisters, when a small nation raises its voice, the world leans in to listen. And when that nation is Burkina Faso, landlocked, underestimated, long treated as a footnote, declaring the training of 25,000 youth soldiers, the world does more than listen. It trembles. The Western response. In Washington, the words were parsed by analysts, their brows furrowed. To them, this was not a cry of sovereignty, but a threat to order. They whispered, "What if these youth become radicalized? What if this destabilizes the Sahel further?" In Paris, the reaction was sharper. France, once the unquestioned master of security in the region, saw its grip slipping. Officials muttered in closed rooms, "This is dangerous. This undermines our influence." Western media echoed these fears. Headlines warned of militarization, of child soldiers, of Africa spiraling out of control. But behind the rhetoric was fear. The fear that an African nation might succeed without them. For if Burkina Faso can raise 25,000 defenders of its soil, then what excuse remains for foreign bases and interventions? The Eastern interest. Meanwhile, in Moscow and Beijing, the announcement was read differently. There, the tone was not fear, but opportunity. Russia, already deepening ties with African states, saw in Traoré's bold move the chance to offer training, weapons, and partnership. China, with its eyes on Africa's minerals and markets, recognized that a sovereign Burkina Faso could be both a challenge and a partner in its Grand Belt and Road vision. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, quietly applauded. To them, the 25,000 youth soldiers symbolized the very thing they champion, a multipolar world where the West no longer dictates the rules. The African mirror. But perhaps the most important reaction came not from East or West, but from Africa itself. Across the continent, leaders watched. In Mali and Niger, governments locked in similar struggles against terrorism saw a path mirrored in Traoré's choice. In Ghana and Nigeria, debates erupted. Should we too invest in our youth? Should we reclaim our defense? For ordinary Africans, the announcement lit sparks of imagination. Social media buzzed with pride. Finally, a leader who believes in his people. In South Africa, students shared clips of Traoré's speech, calling it a new dawn. In Kenya, youth activists wondered aloud whether they too could become defenders of sovereignty. Burkina Faso, small as it is, had suddenly become a mirror. Other nations looked into it and saw either their own weakness or their own possibility. The symbolism on the world stage. At the United Nations, diplomats debated in corridors. Was Burkina Faso sowing chaos, or was it asserting a right too long denied? In the African Union, voices grew louder. If one of us can stand, perhaps all of us can stand. And so, brothers and sisters, we see the paradox. To the West, 25,000 youth soldiers are a threat. To the East, they are an opportunity. To Africa, they are a challenge and an inspiration. And to the world at large, They are a reminder. Even the smallest nation, when it chooses sovereignty, can shift the balance of power. Burkina Faso, once dismissed as poor and powerless, had forced itself onto the world stage, not with gold, not with oil, but with the courage to train 25,000 youth to guard its destiny. Brothers and sisters, we have walked through the announcement, the reactions, and the consequences. But now comes the hardest part. The road ahead. For what is declared must be delivered, and what is promised must be proven. The challenge of discipline. Training 25,000 young people is not simply a matter of handing out uniforms. It is a matter of shaping minds, building character, instilling discipline. An undisciplined army is more dangerous to itself than to its enemy. Traoré knows this. That is why the challenge before him is not just logistical, it is moral. Can Burkina Faso take a generation scarred by poverty and uncertainty and mold them into a force that defends rather than destroys? This means more than drills and marches. It means teaching respect for the people they serve. It means reminding them that the gun is not for oppression, but for protection. If Traoré succeeds in this, the 25,000 will be remembered not as warriors of fear, but as guardians of hope. The opportunity of dual purpose. But brothers and sisters, there is also opportunity. These youth need not be only soldiers. They can be builders. They can be what Sankara once envisioned, soldiers of development. Imagine 25,000 young men and women not only guarding villages, but digging wells, constructing schools, planting trees, repairing roads. Imagine their rifles slung across their backs while their hands lay bricks for a hospital. This is the genius of the plan if carried forward wisely. The youth army can be a shield against terror and a tool of transformation. By blending defense with development, Traoré can turn what critics call militarization into what history may one day call mobilization. The future of sovereignty. The road ahead is also about sovereignty. If Burkina Faso succeeds in training and sustaining this force, it will no longer bow to foreign missions for its survival. It will stand upright, equal among nations. This is not only about security, it is about dignity. For sovereignty is not declared in speeches, it is proven in the ability to defend one's people. But sovereignty comes with responsibility. To keep this youth army loyal to the nation and not to individuals, Traoré must ensure fairness, inclusion, and vision. If corruption seeps in, the project will rot from within. If tribalism divides it, unity will collapse. The 25,000 must see themselves not as a tool of one man, but as the embodiment of a nation. The image of the future. Picture it, brothers and sisters. 5 years from now, 25,000 disciplined youth, men and women standing tall, some patrolling borders, some teaching literacy in villages, some building clinics, some planting trees against the desert's advance. Together, they are not only an army, they are a generation reborn. And beyond Burkina Faso, imagine the echo. Other African nations may rise and say, if Burkina can, why not us? The 25,000 could become the spark that lights a continent, the proof that sovereignty is not a dream, but a decision. The tightrope of destiny. Yet the road is narrow, like a tightrope stretched across a canyon. One misstep could mean disaster, an undisciplined army, an economic collapse, a region thrown into deeper chaos. But if Traoré keeps his balance, the reward is immense. A nation secure, a people united, a continent inspired. Brothers and sisters, the road ahead is not easy, but history has never favored the easy path. History remembers those who dared, who risked, who believed. 25,000 youth soldiers is not just a plan, it is a wager with destiny. Brothers and sisters, let us return one last time to that number. 25,000. At first, it sounded like statistics, like mere arithmetic, but as we have walked this journey together, we now see it differently. 25,000 is not only about soldiers, it is about symbols, it is about seeds, it is about a generation daring to rise. Think about what it means. 25,000 young men and women who will carry rifles not as instruments of tyranny, but as shields of sovereignty. 25,000 who will no longer wait for foreign saviors, but who will stand tall and say, "We are our own defenders. We are our own guardians." The world has reacted with fear, with doubt, with criticism. But those reactions reveal more about the world than about Burkina Faso. For too long, Africa has been told to sit quietly, to accept weakness, to remain dependent. But this declaration is Africa saying, "No more. We will decide. We will defend. We will define." Yes, there are risks. Yes, the path is narrow. But history has never rewarded timidity. It has always favored those who step into the storm with courage. And in this moment, Traoré has not only stepped forward himself, he has called 25,000 to step with him. Brothers and sisters, we stand at the edge of something vast. Will these youth be remembered as 25,000 swords or 25,000 seeds? Will they be written in history as the sparks of war or as the architects of a renaissance? The answer is not yet written. It will be decided in the training camps, in the villages, in the choices of every young man and woman who puts on that uniform. But one thing is already certain. The announcement has awakened hope. It has shaken complacency. It has reminded a continent that the future does not belong to those who wait. It belongs to those who dare. And so I ask you, my friends, are you watching history unfold, or are you walking with it? Are you standing at a distance, or are you lending your voice, your support, your spirit to this rising tide? Subscribe, brothers and sisters. Stay with us, for this story is not over. It is only beginning. 25,000 youth soldiers are rising, and with them rises a nation. With them rises a continent. With them rises the possibility that Africa at last will stand unshaken.